Welcome to the Unmasking podcast with your hosts, Cindy and Sarah. I'm Cindy, a licensed professional counselor and certified yoga instructor.
And I'm Sarah, a licensed professional counselor and registered play therapist. Together, we're on a mission to spread mental health awareness and cultivate connection by talking about the ways in which we can unmask ourselves to create a more authentic life.
Let's unmask.
Hi, friends. We are so glad you're here. Welcome to Unmasking. This is our very first episode of our podcast with Cindy and Sarah. And we are just so glad that you are here on this journey with us. We definitely want this first episode to be all about why we started this podcast, how we met a little bit, and just how the podcast episodes will flow. So I first just want to give a little bit of logistics for the podcast. So we are going to be doing weekly episodes, and those episodes are going to be between 30 and 45 minutes each. They will typically be different topics, but we will sometimes have a series for those. And we are just so happy that you are here to join us. If you want to follow us, you can follow us on Instagram at Unmasked Therapist, where we will also have some psychoeducation for you. We will clarify clinical terms. And we will also have what we call our unmasking invitation. And all of that will also be added below with the podcast. But we are just so glad that you're here. And please be patient with us as we are unmasking this podcast ourselves. But I am now going to hand it over to my best friend and partner in crime with this, Cindy.
Hello. Yes, thank you for your patience. This is new. We're learning a whole new way of doing things. And so we appreciate your patience. But as Sarah said, yes, you can follow us at Unmasked Therapist. And we're also working on just some content that we want to hear your feedback on. So we'll also include our email address eventually so that we can be in communication with you all. But really, what I wanted to start off with is just a little bit of background on how we met, how this idea came together. And so back in 2014, Sarah and I both started as a second career our grad school journey at SMU in Dallas, Texas. And we really just came into this a little bit older and I like to say seasoned. We met and just kind of clicked instantly. I think we both got each other's humor. We both got each other's like 80s terms. We're both children of the 80s. So, and
those,
just kind of
those 1900s, Cindy, those 1900s. It's where we're
sorry.
at.
Yes, we were raised in the 1900s. That's correct. And so, yeah, we kind of became fast friends and really just started learning more about each other's story. And from there, we really kind of went into separate tracks in the grad school. Sarah will get into that a little bit later with her specialty. But I work with clients here in Frisco, Texas. I see mainly clients 13 and up. And so my youngest client is 13. My oldest client is, I think, in his 60s. And yeah, I work mostly with trauma and trauma recovery. And Sarah is a play therapist, which she'll talk a little bit about that again here shortly. But really, we're both moms and we're both parents of neurodivergent children. And so not only did we bond through grad school, but we also bonded through this parenting journey and decided that we wanted to raise some awareness around masking and what that is. Also, we are both complex trauma survivors. And so I wanted to just talk really briefly about what complex trauma is and how it differs from a single traumatic event. And we'll put more about this again in the show notes. But complex trauma is really a form of trauma that is longer lasting. And it's something that repeats for maybe even months and years. And it's usually through relationships. And so as a result of that, we learn to protect and mask. And so, yeah, that's also a topic that's probably going to come up a lot, but we really just want to spread awareness and just make this a safe platform for people to heal and to become more informed. So, with masking, I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah, and she's going to explain a little bit more about the term, why we chose it, what it is, why we do it.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. So, one of the things that Cindy did note was that we both are parents of neurodivergent children. And we had a lot of discussion, particularly because Cindy she has children a little bit older than me, than my child, not me, than my child. And I have a little one. So we are at opposite ends of the spectrum in parenting. However, we have both had the same kind of experience, even though there's access to more information now. It seems that a lot of times with neurodivergent children, it can feel very shaming and very alone as a parent.
Mhm.
And we like to say that we found each other like we were meant to find each other,
Mhm.
um, and put together because there's a bigger purpose for all of this. And so we came to the realization that as moms, we even have masked because we've had to protect our own children in that.
Yeah.
Um, and so, one of the things about masking, if you look at the Oxford Dictionary, is it will say it's to cover or conceal. But when we are looking at it through a mental health lens, and this can be in many different avenues, this can be if you are struggling with anxiety, depression, ADHD, sensory issues, autism spectrum disorder, bipolar. There are so many different avenues, personality disorders that all of these things can go into and play into, particularly with the complex trauma that Cindy was talking about as well. So, from a mental health perspective, that's where we want to focus on masking. And the reason we have chosen to talk about unmasking is because for mental health, this is when you are hiding your symptoms in an effort to blend in with people around you. So you are concealing your true emotions and your thoughts because you want to feel accepted by others, you want predictability, you want safety, and you have learned, you are conditioned from a child that, it's like Pavlov's law, if you do the right thing, oh, you can get rewarded for that. If you do the bad thing, you might not get rewarded. So it's almost concealing your true self in the
Mhm.
process. And that is something that we really found through our children, kind of teaching us something, and then realizing that um, as practitioners ourselves and struggling with a lot of things that we have seen in our children and there just wasn't support for when we were children, that we ourselves have masked, and we see so many people doing that. And so an example of this could be when you are in a social situation and you are forcing yourself to smile. I always like to say that a really good example is, at least from my perspective, is I get very nervous to have to open gifts in front of people. But,
Mhm.
growing up, that was a big deal. And I would practice before I would open gifts, so that I would give everyone the reaction they wanted. Um, and so I think that that's a really good example of when you mask, and how you learn to do that by modeling what you see in others. Role playing before a situation. I know Cindy and I have both worked with people who talk a lot about how, they're trying to feel authentic in relationships, but then they'll come home and they don't feel as safe as they thought they did. So then they replay thoughts in their head. And that just goes back and forth all night. They can't sleep. And really, yes, there are anxiety symptoms there, but a lot of it could be just masking our authentic self and not feeling accepted with those around us. And the reason we do this, I mean, Cindy and I have had big conversations, but a lot of times we mask because it's, for safety reasons. We want to feel accepted by others. We don't want to be called weird. And how do we know if we're doing this?
Hmm.
It's when we're denying something true to ourselves in order to please those around us. So that could be for if you're on the autism spectrum disorder, or even with ADHD, you could be stimming, but you don't do the stems that you want to do. So then when you're alone by yourself, you're able to authentically do that. But out in the public, you don't want to be seen as weird or
Hmm.
odd, or, oh, we don't want to be around that person, things like that. So you really end up with a lot of mental health symptoms that are very detrimental to you mentally and physically,
Yeah.
which we have both seen with clients and with ourselves.
Hmm.
And so I don't know if you have any input on that, Cindy, but
Yeah.
really.
One question I did want to ask, sorry for interrupting. The stemming, we are going to put some, again, show notes and
Mhm.
explain some of these terms, but can you give an example of what stemming is and what that might look like? And if a child doesn't, or a person doesn't have the ability to do that, what could that look like?
Sure. Yeah. So stemming could be particularly, and it doesn't have to just be, a lot of people I think associate stemming with you are on the autism spectrum disorder,
Hmm.
but it can happen for people with ADHD. It can happen for people with anxiety. It can happen in a lot of different ways and present itself in a lot of different ways. So stemming could be sitting in class and maybe you are just, pushing your pen up and down.
Hmm.
It can be shaking your leg back and forth because you need some kind of release, and your proprioceptive and your vestibular systems,
Hmm.
particularly with kids that are have sensory seeking or sensory avoidant behaviors, they're not getting that need met by sitting. So
Okay.
they're trying to shake their leg, they're trying to do something. It can be, um, biting your lips. There's lots of different ways that people can stem and not realize it. It can be sitting here, and playing with your hands like this, ripping up a paper
Hmm.
napkin while you're sitting somewhere. So there's
Yeah.
lots of different things. I mean, there's even hair pulling that people do as a soothing way,
Hmm.
there's spinning, rocking back and forth. There's just so many different things for stemming that is a self-soothing way of coping with an uncomfortable situation. And what we have found, Cindy and I had this conversation, is that with unmasking, you are intrinsically motivated when you unmask. So when you
Hmm.
unmask, you are your authentic self. Intrinsic means you are getting a need met from yourself. You are not externally looking for anything outside of yourself.
Yeah.
But what we have found is for neurodivergent mental health issues, things like that, we are extrinsically motivated, right? Because as a society, we want to feel accepted. We want to
Yeah.
feel loved. We want to feel liked. We don't want to feel different.
Hmm.
Um, but we also are not being true to ourselves. So a lot of times when we mask, we are extrinsically seeking validation. We are not being
Sure.
true to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so our goal with the Unmasking podcast is to be as authentic as we can be, but
Hmm.
also still knowing that there are times when we do have to mask to protect ourselves, but finding the people that make us feel our most authentic self, that accept us for who we are. And also just unmasking different topics. I mean, unmasking the stigma behind, being a neurodivergent mom, being a single unmarried woman, being a
Hmm.
man with high emotions, things like
Yeah.
that. So, I think that our is one of our goals, is really to just talk about a lot of different topics and things that might be uncomfortable to people, but that we all are feeling.
Sure. No, that's great. Thank you for giving a little bit more detail about things like stemming. And, one of the things that Sarah and I have talked about is rolling this podcast out in series. And so, for instance, I know that with masking, there is a lot of shame sometimes involved in this, right? Because we're doing a lot of these things in secret, or just this idea that like our outsides are not matching our insides, and we're aware, right? When we're doing this, that it's not congruent. And some of us might have had experiences where we're raised in environments where when we tried to be our authentic selves, that was not acceptable. And so we have this deep shame around masking. And so I think that that is part of our goal too, is to get into topics where we can really expand on it. And we'll have some experts on here as well. So we're going to be speaking to other people in the mental health field, from pediatricians to nutritionists to other therapists. And so it's going to look very different with each
Mm-hmm.
series. And again, with your feedback, that's really helpful because that'll help us kind of drive some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So if you do have any questions or your own personal experience, we would love to hear from you, because that just really helps us do this podcast with integrity. So yeah, anything else you want to add, Sarah, about that?
I think that you summed it up great. I mean, we are just very excited for everyone to be here. The goal is we just want everyone to delve into finding their authentic self and living their best life. Um, we all masks in lots of different, shapes and forms, and it comes
Mm-hmm.
out physically, mentally. And so, I'm just glad that we can bring awareness to this and that
Yeah.
everyone here that's decided to join us is along for this journey. We definitely want to make this also where we leave a little bit of, since we are therapists, little mental health activity at the end, where everyone can kind of practice, slowly unmasking themselves. And so we're going to have these unmasking invitations, which will also be found on our Instagram account at Unmasked Therapist. But our first one is going to be just thinking about a time when you have felt that you have masked and you are not able to be your authentic self. I think, I don't know, Cindy, if you have one that you can share quickly.
Yes.
I think it would be good
I
just to give a
do.
little
Oh,
example. But yeah, let's see.
you kind of
So
cut
we're
out.
gonna let Cindy be our example for the first unmasking invitation.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I was thinking back to elementary school years, not for me personally, but when my children were in elementary school. So I have high school age and college age children now, which is so weird to say. But back in elementary school, we would have a lot of gatherings, celebrations. So, field day, those kinds of events where parents were encouraged to come up to the school and put on a carnival or whatnot. And I just remember being really hyper aware that there was maybe going to be some judgment at times because, as we mentioned, we both have neurodivergent children, and I was really aware of acceptance and judgment. And so, in an effort to mask my discomfort and really make sure that my child was accepted, I found myself kind of maybe entering into conversations and being really careful about like how I acted and what I said and how I responded. And I'll just be real transparent up front with that. If I could go back and do it differently, I wish that I could have just been a little bit more relaxed and just, not tried to mask for my child, let him be who he is. Because there's so many beautiful gifts that come with him, and just to really be able to celebrate that and find inclusive spaces, both as a parent and a child. So that really sticks out to me as a time in my life when I masked, maybe a little bit more than I do so now. Yeah. What about you,
Well,
Sarah? Do you have anything?
well, I feel like my whole life has been a lot of masking.
Yeah.
But I agree with you on that one, Cindy. I was just going to bring up that, my daughter is 5, And we have not had, like, I was not in a mom's group.
Mhm.
Also, COVID happened when she was very little. And so we were, in the house for quite a while. But I have never felt super comfortable um, in lots of situations where socially I've had to be around a lot of people.
Mhm.
I tend to enjoy more like close knit, like one to two really close friends. And
Yeah.
so that's really uncomfortable. So I never really joined a mom's group. And then, of course, my daughter started struggling, which I'll talk more about, but with huge
Mhm.
meltdowns where people would look at me. And as a child therapist myself, I felt a lot of shame around that, which we'll go more into, where we both have felt the shame aspect in parenting,
Mhm.
because that's really what brought this together. But for me, similar, like I've really had to unmask myself because I've
Mhm.
wanted my daughter to see that who she is. I call her my unicorn,
Mm.
is an amazing person. And I don't want her to feel that there is anything wrong with her. She is just amazing the way that she is, and her feelings matter. And really having to let go of how others perceive me has been a
Mhm.
very big theme in my life, because I tend to want to please. I'm a people pleaser. You know this about me,
Mhm.
Cindy. We both live that life, but
In
we are
recovery.
undoing it. We are in recovery and we are
That's right.
undoing that. But
That's right.
yes, I think really our children are here to teach us something. And
Mhm.
if anything, it's breaking that cycle and letting them be who they are and finding the people that make you feel uncomfortable. And I have noticed that the more I have stepped back, like you said, and the more I have let my child be who she is supposed to be, I have found people. I have
Yeah.
found those people and had more play dates and done those things. And I think that that is really what our goal is here, is to help people live their lives. I know I've said it, multiple times on here already, but just really being as authentic as you can, because with authenticity become comes happiness and
Yeah.
comes freedom. And you know just what we want for our kids, what we want
Mhm.
for our children. And we deserve that too. So,
Yes.
thank you for sharing your example. I mean, we are both on this journey and we just are so glad everybody else is here too.
Yes, yes, beautifully said. Beautifully said. So, just to give you a preview of what you can expect in the next couple of episodes, we're going to take a little deep dive into both of our stories. And we're going to be talking about our childhood, family of origin, how we viewed ourselves in our family of origin, how that's changed as we've aged. There's going to be some generational trauma discussions there, ways we masked, all of those things, right? So we're going to give the next two episodes some time for both of us to really talk about that, so you can feel more connected to us, hopefully. And we'll go from there. But in the meantime, if you could hit like, subscribe, follow us on our Instagram. We are at Unmasked Therapists, plural. And yeah, just we hope that you'll stick around with us. And we're so glad you're here. And stay tuned until
Yay.
next time.
We did it.
We did it.